I can think not just of a guy, but several guys I've actually come, and a woman or two that have been involved in leading, and they're really gifted at doing the frontline work, and they'll be fluent in the language, and they're passionate about people. But one of the hardest things for someone like that, especially they'll tend to get appointed to leadership, and then they don't pull back from their frontline ministry. They feel like they've got to model the perfect ministry. And so then they're actually doing a disservice to their team because they're almost like, just go do what I do. And they don't actually take the time to lead or set direction or care because they're too busy caring for the locals. So that's one of the challenges I've seen people do is they have a struggle of shifting from trying to lead a local to follow Jesus, or they're discipling someone to actually leading their team that they came with or recruited to be a part of them.
Yeah. Too busy doing the work to lead the work. And then everybody suffers because nobody's leading the work.
Yeah, gotcha. Exactly.
Welcome to the Field Leaders Podcast, a podcast by leaders for leaders. I'm your host, Dr. Bob McNabb, and with me today are Scott Lundy. Scott has lived and led in the Middle East for over a decade, and we have Jen, who lives and leads in Southeast Asia along with her husband, and they've been there for 6 years now. And when I sat back and thought about who I'd like to invite to this episode to talk about the most important thing a leader can do, Jen and her husband came to mind because they have done such a good job at leading their team. Obviously not perfect, but I'm sure she'll say that. But I want to overcome her disclaimers that they have done a really great job. And so I wanted to invite her to bless all y'all with having her share today. Let's jump right in. The question of the day is, what is the most important thing a leader can do in leading their team? Any thoughts?
Bob, I think it's that shift of going from being maybe a frontline worker to actually having to lead the people that God has entrusted them, to think more like a shepherd. And that they're really, I think a lot of times it's shifting from I'm a shepherd of the lost sheep to I'm a shepherd of other shepherds that I'm trying to raise up to be shepherds. And it's a different mindset switch. So I think leading your team is one of the biggest mind shifts that has to happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's the primary focus. What initially you start out when you go to the field is, I want to reach the lost. I want to see all these things happen. And then you get appointed as a team leader, and now it becomes your primary focus is empowering and making sure those people on your team are successful at the work they're doing. So I think it's a high calling, and it's actually very sacrificial to your team.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I was coaching a group of different field team leaders, and when we just about every chance we got together, I would try to remind them and say, look, gang, the most important thing you can do is lead your team. I know that seems obvious, but it's so easy to get distracted and to do everything else. And if you don't do it, who is going to do it? And so let's just stop for a second. When we say lead your team, what type of activities are we talking about? What type of things do team leaders who keep their focus on leading their team, what do they do? How they spend their time?
I think that question was really hard for me to initially answer because I thought there's got to be some magic thing I should do. But I think first thing is just looking at their well-being holistically. So I look at my teammates every week and every month. I think about how are they doing in these areas and what do I need to do as a leader to help them move forward, be healthy, take steps like that. So I think that's one thing, just praying and then kind of deciding what next steps your teammates need and how you can help them in that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I agree. There is an element of care. When I talk about care, if I have a PowerPoint or something in a training, I show a picture of a tree that is at the edge of a creek or riverbank. And the backside of the tree, you're on the kind of on the other side of the river and you're looking across. And you can see a field out in the open. So it's almost like if you're 100 yards the other way, you're looking at the tree 180 degrees. It's it looks like the tree is fine. But from our side, you can see all the roots underneath it are exposed. The foundation's being washed away by the river. And part of caring is knowing the condition of how your people are doing. And things might look good on the surface from far away or even from one angle. You actually have to get around to people and be in their lives and not just look at one little thing all the time and think, oh, they're fine, move on.
Yeah. And when I think about the leaders that I have known and led and other ones I've observed, I think a lot of times they kind of fall into one of two buckets. One is the shepherd-hearted that it does a really good job with caring for people on their team. And the other is more of the apostolic, visionary, and let's go get them and looking forward. But you really have to do both, don't you, as a team leader? I've seen some teams that are really well cared for and they're all healthy and green and lush, but they're not bearing any fruit. They're a happy group. And then you've seen the run ragged, but they're knocking it out, but they're all about on fumes. And so you really, as a leader, have to spend your time trying to dance between how do we strike that balance and keep the team both healthy and on task.
Yeah, Bob, and I would say, as you're mentioning, we talked a little bit about care, but yeah, if you're not setting direction for your team, then that well cared for group kind of becomes like the holy huddle. It's like the Bible study that never goes, it's the same people year after year. So there's got to be a setting of direction, a little bit of getting everybody in line on the same page and making sure, and even follow up. One of the complaints or issues I've seen is somebody will be a great visionary and they'll cast a great vision and kind of think, okay, everybody go do it. And then they don't ever check in and they come back 6 months later and it's like, why are you struggling? I told you what to do, but they didn't give any other details and they just feel like you're insubordinate and everybody's just scrambling around trying to do it. So you can set direction, but you've got to also follow up with that, not just with care, but like you said, the apostolic types that are, some people need more details. Some people need to know what the rules are or the boundaries and things like that.
I remember when I first started leading Launch Global, and we would recruit mobilizers to come on the staff, and they raise all their support. They're excited to go, and they're at full support. And then they're like, what do I do every day? What do I do this week? And so it's not enough just to cast the vision. You then have to come and say, okay, yeah, we've cast the vision. Now, do you know what your next step is? Mm-hmm. And so you've got to be long range, but then you have to bring it to this week and today. Mm-hmm. And so that a leader needs to make sure that their people are prepared to do that. I think of some other, say, lead your team. I think, vision casting, clarifying objectives, next steps, establishing and reinforcing the values of the team. Here's a big one: coordinating efforts, getting your team members in the same room or virtually, but whatever way, but getting them talking with one another about what are you doing? How can I help? How can you help me? And really getting them coordinating their efforts where synergy kicks in, really making each other better. That's a huge thing. And if there's not a person leading and directing that dance, then more times than not, it doesn't happen. And that's such a missed opportunity. Man, you think about the Tower of Babel where God himself said, if they keep working together, if they can communicate, they can do anything. And man, it's so powerful if people will get together and communicate and coordinate. And that's the job of the leader, is to convene the members and say, hey, let's talk about how do we make each other better. Providing regular feedback, helping the individuals on the team develop and get stronger personally. Yeah, I know I'm throwing a lot of different things, and that can be overwhelming at time as a leader to think, wait, I need to do all these different things. But here's a small cheat sheet that I want to share with you. I actually have a little model that I've developed that talks about thinking about your team and what they need. It's kind of a prayer sheet you can use and a coaching sheet you can use. And I'm going to put that in the description. I'll put a link to that, but to a video that shares that. So I want to provide you some help, not just have you overwhelmed. There's a little one-pager that you can look at and interact with as a tool, and it will help you think through what do they need next. And so anyway, wanted to have a little help. But any other thoughts you guys have on what does it look like for a team leader? Let's try to share a few illustrations instead of just abstract concepts, stories where you've seen a leader do well, whatever. Let's share a little bit of that to help flesh it out a little bit.
I was just going to suggest one idea our team started doing a year ago is we do ministry coaching. And so every week we get together and we're all running different ministry streams and we're doing mobilization. So we're all going different directions, but we come together every week. We talk through it. And it's kind of a piece of accountability because here's what we're talking about when we leave, here's what we're going to do. But today we had one of those coaching times. We haven't been together for 2 months. We get together and we're leaving the meeting. I'm like, does everybody know what you're going to do tomorrow? We know where
Excellent.
we're going to go. And on our team, we're really fortunate. Mark is high vision and Bob's so in the clouds, high vision, apostolic. I'm more shepherding. And then we both are pretty passionate about how do we help our team members grow. And so it works really well because I'm a better manager and he's a better, here's where we're going kind of person. So we've even said, hey, here's your strength. You lead out. Here's my strength. I'm going to lead out here. And I think our team flourishes, but we don't do it with only our voice. Our teammates also are amazing. And so they're coming in this coaching time and I may be facilitating it, but they're giving this awesome input. And we get done and we're all going in such a better direction because we've talked through it and worked together. So just like I would encourage teams, do ministry coaching time together and don't let it be about the leader. Let it be about the team talking through things. And that's been one thing that's been really good for our team.
That's great. And I love how you guys share the leadership role and each one of you lean into your stronger points with it. So the way you co-lead and then the way you're sharing leadership with the team, because it's too heavy for one person to do it. That is such a good model to share the leadership role and make it a joint effort.
Yeah, Bob, not to toot your horn too much, but one of my best examples was working for you back, 2007, 2008, when we were working on a project together. And you were kind of the main leader. I was kind of the right-hand man. And you were one of these visionary types. And let's be honest, the visions were coming out faster than I can make them realities. But we were able to, some key things happened. Number one, I could hear your vision and be able to act on it. And then you didn't just say, go do it, but each week we went to lunch on Monday and at that little Subway around from where we worked. And we would kind of have our weekly check-in. It was like, okay, this is what you would be like. What's what you're thinking? This is what I'm thinking. Or, hey, I was trying this, but it didn't work. Or someone's, hey, by the way, they're sick this week. Or so-and-so's having marriage problems. So I don't know if we can add more to their plate this next semester. So it wasn't just setting the direction and walk away. It was regular, ongoing reevaluation of where we are and what we need to be doing this week in light of the bigger picture. And it was also a great time to see when people in the field tend to get sick a lot. And so we had a lot of family members that were getting sick or tired or the kids were sick. And it was like, are we ever going to, how far can, why is this taking so long? We had in total, like 55 people on our launch team for what we were doing. And there's a lot of stuff that was going on with that. But you did a great job of caring for us, leading us, helping us grow and develop with the trainings that you did. And so to me, that was all the core elements of leading well.
Thanks. It was a sweet time to be able to do that together.
Yep.
I think back to my days with Campus Outreach, the early days, and the input I had into my life and kind of what were some of the themes that I was taught about leadership. And one of the things that I think was taught from the early days was this concept of thinking for people, not in the bad sense, like you're too much, but in a good sense, like thinking about how do we help these people be successful? How do you help the people on your team think for them? Being proactive in that, not just responsive. I would say if you are a team leader, being proactive and proactively thinking for the people on your team and how to make them successful, that's not like up and above the standard. You're not like the best leader ever if you're proactively thinking for your people. That's baseline. That's just what leadership is. And so we all have to ask ourselves, am I proactively thinking for what do they need next, now? How do we help? And just thinking that way, that's the kind of leadership that all of us need and all of us benefit from. Before we move on, I wanted to ask Jen to clarify. You mentioned that you guys are doing mobilization. I know a lot of people in the worker world, when they hear that, what that means is recruiting to a mission agency. That's not what you guys are doing in mobilization. And what you're doing is so powerful, such a good strategy. Take 30 seconds and explain what you guys are doing, because I really love the strategy you guys have chosen.
Yeah, that's a great question because I guess we try to say we equip and train and send is more of what we do. But instead of, some people think of that as I'm going to send them out, we actually really come alongside. So in our country, we're in one of the largest Muslim countries in the world, but there's an above ground church and there are believers here and they're like 10% of the population. So our heart is to see them fulfill the Great Commission. Like we think that's for every believer to play a role in. And so instead of going there and saying, here's what you do, good luck, see you in a week, did you do it? We do a little bit of training, but we come alongside them through disciple making teams and we help them, learn how to go out and share their faith, pray with them. And then our real goal is to actually see them lead those teams themselves. So right now we're in like third generation with the church and they're leading the whole thing and we're doing coaching and come in and fill in the gaps every once in a while, but it's really their thing. So yeah, that's kind of mobilization. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, mobilizing proximate peoples into the harvest and equipping them. And you're providing some supportive leadership and some of the things. So just to clarify that when we're talking here about leading your team, you have a team of expats that you're doing this with, but you're also providing supportive leadership for those that you are equipping and mobilizing.
Yeah, and I was thinking when you're sharing that earlier, is actually thinking when I'm leading my teammates, I'm thinking also, what is the impact of their lives on the people they're leading or they're discipling? And we always kind of say, keep your eye on the second generation, look ahead to what is there. So I do that also with the nationals that I'm working with too. I'm thinking, okay, right now, if they're going this direction with this decision, what will be the impact of that on the people they're pouring into? So I think that's a really important thing for a leader to not just think for the person you're leading, but also who they're going to influence and impact. And
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Bob, as we've talked a little bit about care, we've talked about leading, and this lines up with kind of what I teach people, which is lead, develop, care are the three primary responsibilities. And when we talk about development, we're always talking about, okay, what's the task that needs to be accomplished and who can be developed in the process? And how do we put those together? Because if someone's not being developed and you just keep focusing on the task, eventually they're just going to feel like they're being used and they're going to feel like this job is kind of stagnant. I don't have anywhere to go. And a lot of people need that opportunity for growth and the stimulation. They're not looking to just kind of take it easy. They want to make a difference in the world and they want to become better at what they do. When I think lead, develop, care, and develop is definitely a key part of being a good leader.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've kind of defined and given a few examples of what it can look like to do a good job at leading your team. But why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to stay focused on that? If that's really the core of what a leader needs to do is stay focused on leading the team, what other kind of stuff do you see leaders doing that get them off track, or why is it so hard?
I think my first thought was, man, I remember in college, the first short-term trip into an unreachable group I led, it was like 6 or 8 weeks. And then my church said, we want you to co-lead it. And I thought, no way, I don't want to do that. I just want to go out there and share with people. That's all I'm called to do. That's what I want to do. And I remember they sat me down. They asked me to pray about it. The Lord said, yes, do this. And then they sat me down and they said, this is going to be a sacrifice. Instead of you getting the 30 hours of sharing, you're going to get the 15. And I think that was actually really sad to me. I was not super thrilled about that because my heart was to see people come to faith. And I think that's the first thing is most people are moving there. That's their first passion. That's the whole reason they gave up their lives in America was to go and see the gospel impact people. And so that's one thing that's vying for you. You're always got that passion. You're just like, that's what I want to do. And it can feel like leading is in the way of that instead of leading is actually allowing that to be more fruitful down the road. So that was one thing that came to mind. Also, just overseas life is so stressful, like it's chaos. And so you start your day thinking this one thing's going to happen. And today I found myself trying to get home. It took me 2 hours. When it's had to walk, had to take a bus, got locked out, and that is life overseas. So then there's 2 hours of my day I'm not doing other things. So I think time is a lot shorter in some ways overseas because of that. So a few things.
Sure. And as you were sharing that, I was thinking about a really courageous leader, a courageous man that I know who found himself leading a team on the field, and he really wanted to be out spending time in the harvest, working with nationals, and it would just kill him when he would have to spend time leading his team. and doing the things that, and I'd say he's really courageous because when he looked at that, he said, you know what? My heart is really not in it. And so I'm willing to step out this situation where I'm the leader and allow someone else to lead. And so I can be more in the harvest. And so you pray and you say, Lord, do you want me to put this on the cross, be the leader, even though I want to do it like you did, like Jen, you felt called to do that and go that. This guy felt the direction of going the opposite direction. And both of those are great, but the situation we don't need to be in is a prolonged situation where the leader doesn't really want to be leading. And if that's the case, then do everybody a favor and step out of that leadership. Well, the other thing I would say is perhaps step down a level in leadership. Perhaps you're just leading a little sub-team within a larger team and get to the appropriate level for how you're wired and where your heart is. And so that may be something people are listening today and say, man, I really wanted to be in the harvest and I'm spending they might find themselves in that same position as this other fellow I was talking about or you. And they need to pray through what's the right step. This is to step out of leadership or give it to the cross and ask the Lord to empower me the other direction. Scott, you had something to say?
When I think about looking and promoting and helping leaders recruit teams, I call them the 4 C's, but the first 2 are confidence and competence. And for many years in my country, as a part of a network where we were having people finish language and trying to matchmake a little bit like, hey, who feels called to this city? Because we had some key cities identified where we wanted to resource. We didn't care what org you were with. We wanted to put people together and say, hey, go take that city. We'll help you. And I noticed one of 2 things when we talked about, hey, does anyone feel called to lead? Either someone would go, ooh, pick me. So they had plenty of confidence, but our interactions with them was like, they have no clue what they're getting into. Like, I don't think they have the competence to do their job well. And then a lot of times after one of these big meetings where all these groups would come in, us leaders get together and say, hey, you notice Andy and Suzanne, they didn't raise their hand. What's up with that? And they are very confident that they don't have the competence to do it because they do see all what's at stake. And look, I can kind of do it. Like maybe I've had some people to help us, but I'm not going to be the sole leader because this is a big deal. And confidence or competence, I think, struggles. And as we just talked about, taking a step down, the people that had the confidence but maybe not competence, a lot of times it's ego. Like they want to be seen not just as a great frontline missionary, but become a leader of leaders. They want the recognition in their group. And so they like going to the monthly leaders meeting or something like that. And it gets complicated. There comes one of the other C's is character. So that's where character starts coming into play, and which is a whole nother subject.
I'm so glad we're doing this episode to just put the spotlight back on the need for leaders to lead their teams, because my observation has been that the underleading of teams is at epidemic proportions. I see it so many times. I think about a young man. I sat down and talked with him and had lunch with him, and I said, tell me about your experience. And he said, I trained to come overseas for a while, and then I raised my support, and I came over here, and I learned the language, and I've done all this, and I'm ready to go. And now it's just me by myself, and I don't have anybody to work with. Wait, you're on a team. And what about your team leader? Isn't your team leader coming alongside and helping? And he said, my team leader is doing a graduate degree now. I'm like, what? All this time you've come and you've prepared and you're ready to go, and then your team leader's AWOL. I think other times where it's just the team leader so there's certain times they make bad choices. We make bad choices. Let me just tell a story on myself for a minute. Todd told one that made me look good. Let me tell one that shows how bad I can be at times. I think about back when I was leading a team in Thailand. And I don't know, let's see, I was there 10 years. I think this was probably about year 3 maybe. And my supervisor came over, my coach came over, spent some time with my team, asked them all, how's it going? And then we kind of huddled up together and we were just talking openly. And one of the team members, one of my team members that I was supposed to be leading said, yeah, Bob spent this last year building a cabin. And so we had an opportunity. We lived in Bangkok. It was a stressful city. And we had a donor give money for us to build a cabin outside the city, right at the foothills of a national park. It's beautiful, a good place to have prayer retreats but I was distracted. I got preoccupied building the cabin that year, and I totally dropped the ball a good chunk of that time in leading the way I should have. And man, it can just happen to you, and and so this is why it's so important to have a coach in your life who's asking the questions of you, like, how are the people on your team doing? Hey, what do they need right now? Because all of us can fall into fumbling the ball. I think about another time, like we had to get our finances set up within the team and the expenses and stuff. And I had to learn kind of accounting stuff. It seemed, and I wasn't doing a good job delegating, and I became the person the financial and there's so many issues, visa issues. You get tied up in running the language school or the BAM thing or the whatever. And every time you get tied up in one of those things, you're taking your eye off of the team and leading the team, and the whole team suffers. It's just one of the challenges of doing it.
And Bob, I also think there's an issue of expectations. Some people are expecting, like I knew in this one particular city in the Middle East, where after dark, women aren't really out. And so all the women on the team would have to be home by 7:00. The issue was these girls would end up, what do we do after 7? They were up from 7 to midnight. If they didn't have friends to go, local friends, they were starting to get lonely. And so they wanted to spend more time with the team leaders' wives just for friendship. And they're like, the wives were homeschooling their kids, then cooking, and then cleaning up. And then by 7, 8 o'clock at night, they're just dead dog tired. They barely even have time for the husband, much less someone else. And so I think another key issue in all this is clear expectations up front as far as how does that leader view what their role is and what do their teammates view the role. I call it the track and field team versus the volleyball team in a sense of how much interaction you have in the activities. And because a volleyball team, if you got to mix inappropriate matching on that issue, it can definitely lead to a lot of problems and team members feeling like my leader doesn't lead me or doesn't lead me well. Or they're like, no, my team leader wants to meet all the time. I just came here to work with the locals and they want to have a meeting every couple of days. And let's just meet once a month. So that's a whole nother type of different leadership issue.
Yeah, I think on that note, just, having it really clear in your MOU, what you expect and what you're going to give, and then trying, because that's an issue we've run into on both ends. Sometimes people feeling like you're way up in my business, and some people like you're not enough around me and you're not helping me enough. And you're like, oh, which is it? I don't know. So we try, and I say we try to outline it in our MOU. We still have those misses, but I do think, and then re-clarifying again, okay, here's where we're going. It's going to feel uncomfortable, or I can't be with you in all these things because you need to take those steps. But I think that expectations is, and even for leaders, it's super hard. One thing I was thinking, a lot of times people don't lead their teams because it's disappointing as a leader. Your own expectations, you're thinking, I poured in, 8 hours this week into my team through meetings, coaching, prayer, one-on-ones, whatever. And then you aren't working hard, or you're frustrated, or you're XYZ. And that's disappointing. And I think that's unmotivating as a leader. And as a leader, you have to come back to, why am I doing this? Or even worse, your teammates leave the field. We just went through that in our last season. And it's like we put a lot of time into that. And so one of my friends, actually, she's been on the podcast, Lindsay, asked me, did you do that for them, or did you do that unto the Lord? And that was just a really good question for me to come back to. Why am I pouring out this time into my teammates, even if they are frustrated, even if they leave the field? And what's the point of that? And so I think, getting to the heart of why do I show up and do this every day was really helpful for me too.
Yeah. Jen, as you were talking about how you had some people saying, well, you're too much up in my business, and others say, hey, you're too absent. I've heard that same thing, and I don't know what leader hasn't. And so I just want to give some encouragement to the leaders out there that if you're hearing some criticism, like you're too micromanaging or you're too absent, you're not giving, if you're hearing that, you're leading. You're alive. You're a leader. That's natural. You don't stink at it, give up. This is hard, and we just need to encourage each other because evil wants to pursue you as a leader and say, you're no good, nobody, because I have never met a leader who hasn't had critique flow their direction regularly. And so just be encouraged, folks, as we talk about this. You are not alone if you're getting some critique, and it doesn't mean you stink and need to give up as a leader. But as we're talking about why it's so hard, I got to confess another sin here, or another weakness, and that is that sometimes there's something you just like to do. And we kind of touched on this with the leader who wants to get out there in the work. And they're what I've labeled ministry mistresses. And so you've got your commitment that you've made is, I'm going to lead the team, and but then, like for me over the year, like I like to teach, and I'll say yes to sometimes teaching things that will take me away, maybe more than it should, from keeping my eye on the ball of leading the team. And so that's kind of a ministry mistress. And what I would say is, if you find yourself so in love with your mistress, this is not the covenant of marriage, obviously, okay? So in this situation, I would say if you find yourself just really gravitating toward that mistress all the time and really in love with that, then maybe you don't need to be the leader. Maybe you need to divorce from that leader job, which is okay, and do this leader I mentioned earlier, and go marry the mistress and do that, because nobody flourishes when their leader hates leading. And so identify those ministry mistresses if they have them, and you love to go do that thing. Maybe for different people, different personality types, you know what it is, that thing you love to gravitate toward. I think this was called to my attention particularly. I read a book called The Motive by Lencioni, and he talks about a CEO who basically had a mistress, which was the marketing. Like he used to be in marketing. He was the head of the marketing before he was CEO. And that was where his passion really was. And it kept drawing him in there, and he'd find life there. But to have to get everybody together and get them to communicate and coordinate their plans and work together well and deal with he didn't like that. And he had a different wiring. And so we, again, need to figure out what our wiring is, because if you don't, your team will stagnate, people will become frustrated, and things can fall apart. I think about a leader in Southeast Asia, got so busy with field work, financial reports, partnership communication, some translation work, and just kind of put leading the team on the back burner. Thought it would just happen naturally. Then months passed by, and some team meetings were missed, and coaching conversations didn't happen. The direction got fuzzy. Interpersonal tensions kind of started to grow. There was a team member who did a major misstep and culturally, which caused a big fracture. And then, the team just started to fall apart. Someone asks for a transfer. The people start feeling burned out. And it is so important that we keep our focus on the main thing. If you're the leader, lead, and don't allow mistresses or other things capture your attention when you need to be leading your team. Okay, let me move us on to another question. What leadership activity do you wish you had spent more time on in the past?
Bob, I struggle because there's a number of them, but I would say learning how to motivate others, because my personality, I'm very self-motivated. And so when I'm working for a visionary leader, I catch the vision and let's go do that. And so it doesn't take much for me to want to go and do the work. You don't have to follow up with me on, hey, how's it going? I'm usually wanting to report in and, hey, can we meet? Can I update you? Versus when I'm leading others that need more of the external motivation. So I've had to read a little bit on that, because it just doesn't come natural to me, because I'm like, why do you need me to motivate you? You're a grown up, go do it. Yeah. And so I think learning when people aren't motivated and how I can come alongside them to, as Jim would say, and you as well, how do we call people up versus calling them out? Like if they're not getting their work done or meeting their task, whatever, instead of calling them out and shaming them, it's like, hey, how do we call them up into the activities and releasing of their energy to apply to whatever the task or the goal is?
Yeah. I think that's really good, because actually I was facing that, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because in my head, this is just what you should do. But everyone is different, personalities are different. And even what people enjoy, that helps motivate them. But I feel like, it's a challenge.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. When I think of an area of leadership where I wish I had done more work or helped my teams more is the area of collaborating. And that may sound like, what are you talking about? Isn't it all that? I like to drop leadership activities into one of four buckets. One is clarity. That bucket contains making the vision clear. What's my role? What am I supposed to do? What am I empowered with? And so there's that clarity function of leadership. Then there's the competence. People need competence. It's developing people, helping them grow and become competent. And then there's care. Certainly we need to care. And then there's this other quadrant, and that is collaborate. So getting your team together, talking about, like we've mentioned earlier, talking about what are you doing? How can I help? How can we work on this together? Not just dividing the pie, but actually talking about how do we help each other succeed in the pieces we're working on. I think that's something I wish I'd done more of and really created more of that communication and collaboration time with the teams. I was stronger on the clarity and the competence and care, but weaker on that one.
Yeah. Bob, just to think about your 4 C's, you mentioned collaborate was one of yours. I actually was in a place where I'm like, I need help leading because care is not my strength. And so I actually recruited people to be more on the member care side. I couldn't just say, go take care of it. Don't ever tell me about it. But I was very intentional about collaborating with others that had member care giftings. And because mine is more focusing on are they competent, trying to develop them, to teach, to model, to coach, and thinking through, I don't want to call it curriculum, but what do they need to have to be an effective, fruitful laborer on the field in a cross-cultural environment? So that was my quadrant I was focused on the most. And sometimes I'd have to come back to the clarity because there was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I said, no, you're called to do this work. Remember, this is the vision.
What you just said, what you did of asking for help on your weaker quadrant, that's a beautiful model that all of us need to say, you know what, we're part of a body. We're one part. We're not good at all of it. And so the way you leaned in is exemplary, that for our listeners to figure out where you're the weaker. And is it the bringing the clarity? Is it the helping people collaborate or developing the competence or care? And get some team members and other people to help you in your weak areas for sure. Jenna, is there a particular area that you haven't done as much that you wish you had?
Yeah, I think I would not say I'm the most assertive person, and also vision casting. And so honestly, there was a point where I was like, I just kind of would let Mark do those things, but it's letting him do that has actually hindered things when I'm working with nationals. That's actually, oh, wait, I need to get better at this. I need to actually vision cast for them, and I need to be more assertive as I'm leading instead of kind of leaning on someone else to do it. So I actually think that the things that Mark's strong in, I've kind of let that be there. And I wish I would have jumped in and said, even though I know he's good at that, I wish I had jumped in and did that a little bit more.
That's a great point, that even if you're weak at it and leaning into somebody else, don't give up on it.
Yeah.
Don't quit doing it altogether. And that's really a good counterbalance there. If someone finds themselves in a situation where they feel they're listening to us and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, I haven't been leading the way, I've been missing this piece or that piece, or I haven't been leading quite the way I should, what would you say they should do? What are some steps forward for them when they realize I'm not quite hitting on all cylinders here?
I think what came to mind first is go get away and spend some time in prayer. Do a day or two of a prayer retreat and just listen to the Lord, confess, but also let him speak identity into you. There's a great book by Jamie Winshape about identity. And I feel like that was a really powerful thing for me, because sometimes you're not leaning in to who the Lord's actually called you to be. And so let the Lord speak into that. Repent for where you have had a mistress, the lies you believed, those sorts of things. And then I would say, go to your team and share it with your team. We had to go and say, hey, we're wanting to say yes to a lot of things. And the good things can be the enemy of the best. So guys, when we start running a direction, can you tell us, let's not do that? You don't have time for that. And so I think even going to your team, if you're in a team that is a good environment, I think there might be times where that's actually not appropriate. But if you have a good environment, go to your team, hear their feedback. And my next step was make a quit list. And what are you going to quit? And I had to do that last January. I had a bunch of random things on my plate that were not valuable. accomplishing the things I really wanted to do. And so I had to go through and start quitting stuff and saying, that's not what I need to be doing. That's not what God's asked me to do. And yeah, so that would be kind of my first steps, is really process it with the Lord. Also process it with your overseer, because they're super helpful. They're watching everything, and they will speak in. I feel like ours speak in, and then other times they're like, we also want you to hear from the Lord and then come back to us. And they can also see where you're erring. So yeah, those would be a few things.
Wow, that was a super solid process you just shared. I love that. And I think if we all just did what you just said, we would all go up in our leadership. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Really starting with repentance, confessing, bringing it in, bringing others in. All that was so solid. Thank you. Scott, thoughts?
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Jen's saying, and of course, we're going to have Brian Brown come up somewhere in this season. And I work with him on some of this, being able to coach people through a 360 process. It's called the Trusted Leader 360. And it looks at, like in the corporate world, 360 is if you're in the middle, you talk to your boss, you talk to their peers, and talk to people underneath them. There's an instrument that can be used to survey all these people and look at where do you think you are, and then where do other people think you are. So it measures not only your skills and competency, so to speak, in leading, but also a little bit of your EQ. How well can you read your own emotions, but also those of those around you. So that's piggybacking on what Jen said. I think once you know that, then it comes back to that collaborating, figuring out, oh, wow, I need to grow in this. So who can I get resourcing from or coaching, or do I need to go to a training or something like that? So it's being more intentional about your own development at that point. And Bob, that's my favorite thing, is to coach leaders or coach leaders of leaders. And so I love it when they go through a 360 and it's, here's a very specific thing. Okay, great. What's come up, as you mentioned, doing some listening prayer, where do we focus? And then go after it, come up with some plans and start helping them, coaching them through that transition, so that it's not just, hey, that was a great report, or yeah, we now know, but how do I actually apply it? In my opinion, it comes from regular interaction of applying the principles you're learning into real life. So you're actually changing as you try to use the material and get out of your comfort zone until it becomes comfortable.
Absolutely. And I hear in what both of you have said, this idea of the value of coaching and getting other people. And I would just, in there, that sometimes it can be hard to have a professional coach, or maybe you don't have that in your organization that strongly. Peer coaching can be fantastic. And that can be available to anyone who's listening to this, because with Missio Nexus, if you go onto our website and look at the Field Leaders Network, we have a page there that will allow you to sign up for a peer coaching group. And we call them leadership tables and field leaders tables. And that's available as well. I think about time blocking as another important thing. If you know what, I'm not really delivering the goods, go into your schedule. Like Jen said, you're going to have to say no to some things, but go ahead and block off time to think, time to coach, time to plan and connect, and just time block something. Very simple thing. All right, good.
Yeah, Bob, that's been revolutionary for me, because I basically don't set any meetings before 10 a.m. And it's not because I sleep in. I actually usually wake up between 5 and 6. But if I get up at 6, that gives me 4 hours to have my quiet time, to do some exercise, to make sure I ate something for breakfast before I ran out the door. I journal, I check emails, I check messages. And if I'm stressed about something, I go through that process I mentioned earlier. But also, it really is that time to think and process and think for your people that you're leading, and what do they need. And so it's been a huge change for me and I would say my mental health, so to speak, to be able to just block off and just have my assistant knows, don't block anything don't make any appointments for me before 10 a.m. because that's the kind of me and God time and me and processing time.
Yeah. I would say that similarly, like I started saying these nights I can't do this thing. This afternoon is only for planning XYZ. I'm not going to put a meeting there, because also you put in those admin times and then someone wants to meet and then you've dropped that and then you're behind for whatever else is going to happen. So I think that's a huge help.
Yeah, somewhere along the way, I came up with the term sacred meetings. And because what I found was we would get, with your direct reports, you would get them on the schedule, and then if someone would have something else come up like, hey, actually, can we move our time because this other thing and opportunity, or they would do that to me. And in the end, instead of meeting weekly or biweekly, it just gets once a month or once every other, and it just happens too infrequently. And so that's where we kind of coined the term, this is sacred. It needs to happen. It's important. We're going to say no to other things so that we can have our one-on-ones. And so we can share, communicate. So the one-on-ones, but also you have to view your team meetings that way well. Otherwise, where's the space you're going to be able to collaborate? If someone's listening and they are coaching team leaders, what thoughts or advice would you have for them about how to help the team leaders they're coaching be even more successful at leading and keeping leading the main thing?
I think, a couple things come to mind. One is you need to know. I'm what's called a team leader overseer with one particular org. I'm not in their org, but it's interesting, they allowed basically the team leader to pick who their boss is, and they don't even have to be in the org. So I've been through this org's trainings. So one of the requirements is I have to go do a field visit every year. And these are people not in my country. So I'm getting on an airplane. Yeah. And when I'm in town, I don't just have a field visit. There's resources for that if y'all want. But I go meet with everybody on the team. Maybe if it's inappropriate for me to meet with women or something, I'll meet in someone's home. Or if it's a couple, I meet with both of them. And kind of just do a check-in with them without the team leader there in case they're like wanting to tell somebody something, but they don't know how to bring it up. And I'll usually ask, like, all right, are there any elephants in the room that I need to know about? And it's not to sync the TL. It's more so I have a pulse of what's going on. And so that's when I'm in person. And then also throughout the year, I tend to do some touches. I tend to email the teammates, hey, praying for you, whatever. I'm on their newsletters. Again, not trying to go around the back, but it lets me know how they're doing and helps me think through that team leader. I really have to help with helping them think through to develop, because they're either really good at care or really good at lead. And because most of the people are in what I call restricted access countries, everybody's working 40, 50, 60 hours a week so they can have a visa to be in the country. So there's not a lot of time for these other development pieces. So it's usually helping them strategize and as well as care for their people.
Yeah, I'm actually in that org, and I really appreciate the field visits. I think I see my overseers. You're supposed to see them once a year. I think I see them twice a year, and ended up in a situation where, they know all of our teammates. They know their personalities. I was going to say, if you're a coach or overseer, you should know, like keeping your eye on the second generation, you should know their wirings, you should know their personalities, you should know their strengths. They sit down with them, they meet with them, and they can share whatever they want about us. And I actually, at first, maybe not my favorite thing, but I found myself really appreciative of it because they're trying to hear, we've gotten in a situation where they need to hear both sides, and they remain neutral on those things. And then it helped us come to greater resolution and reconciliation in the relationship. And so I would say, even as a TL, let your overseers, let your coaches come into your team in that way, because then you can, everything's out in the open. You don't have to worry, like, am I being overbearing or anything? Like, it's all in the open. Other people know you're being held accountable. If you get off a little bit, your overseers can gently move you back. They can see those things, or your teammates. They can also come in and tell your teammates, hey, maybe see this over here. So it lightens your load. I don't know. I would just say, as a coach or overseer, try to visit and know every person. And you don't have to call them all the time, but know who they are and know what's going on.
That's really good. In a future season, we are going to focus on the team leader overseer and how to do that job and how to excel at it. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way in that, and feel like I've learned a ton from doing things in a way that wasn't the best. And so I'm looking forward to having a venue or podcast where people can come in and share all of their hits and their misses in that. And I think we'll have a whole episode on how to do a field visit, because it's so important. I remember studying the biblical term elder or overseer, and it literally is someone who sees. And along with that is the idea of making visits. And so if you look at your Vines or whatever biblical dictionary you use to look at Greek words, you'll see that it's very strong. Someone who visits, someone who sees through visiting. And so it's a powerful tool. So I'm glad y'all hit on that. I would say the other thing too is to have monthly reports. You may do it more frequently, but don't do it less frequently. Monthly reports that ask good questions that help the leaders focus, come back on what they need to be spending their time on. And so I always ask the leaders under me to please have a monthly day of prayer. And during that monthly day of prayer, spend some time reflecting on last month and thinking about what your objectives for the next month. And then let's talk about those in a monthly coaching. And so that's a good opportunity as well in between those annual or biannual visits. So I think those are some good ones. So as we wrap up, are there any resources that you would want to point listeners to, encourage them with, that tools that might be helpful to them?
I'm going to steal Scott's thunder a little bit, but we love Lead Develop Care and read the book, did some stuff, but then went through a training for it, and it's so helpful. So I just think every leader should grab that book and actually just go find their way to a training and then even have coaching, because I think like we're talking about, how are you going to implement those things down the road? Yeah, having someone coach you through that. And then the other book I've really appreciated for leadership is Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership by Ruth Barton. And this kind of gets more into the heart of a leader, but it also really exposes, lies you're believing, or if you're overworking, or different things like that. So that's been a book that's been a really huge blessing to me too. Yeah,
with the Lead Develop Care, one thing I've appreciated about Scott and his ministry is he uses that Lead Develop Care and coaches people to that model. A lot of times you have the coaching that's, what do you think you need to do? What do you think the solution? And that can be helpful. That can be, there's a time for that and a place for that. But there's also a time and a place where there's biblical principles that you coach people toward a particular model. And in ministry coaching, it's often that way. I remember going through 1 Timothy one time and found over 30 directives where Paul is coaching a young church planter in how to do the work. And he wasn't just asking 30 open-ended questions, specific directives to help him be successful. And so there's a balance there. Anyway, Scott, I've appreciated that. And I wonder what other tools that you use as you coach people.
Yeah, other than the LDC, which is my main flagship of what I try to do. But I would say, I've already mentioned Brian Brown's Trusted Leader 360. You've got Schindel-Decker's work on Peace Pursuit. That's a great tool. There is, while we just talk about coaching in the ICF, the international coaching world, they would say coaching is the very open-ended question you're not leading, whereas mentoring is a little more the person who's got the experience. And so I probably do. Sometimes I mentor, sometimes I coach, but there's some good coaching resources out there. Keith Webb has some stuff. Identity Exchange, which is Jamie Winship's group to talk about identity. If someone's questioning, should they be a leader or not? Team Dynamics, which is more about how people interact, and it's a different spin than developing a leader. But you can be a great leader, but if you don't understand team dynamics, it could turn into a train wreck because you're focused on maybe the vision and not so much, okay, how do I create a team charter, set vision, mission, core values, and there's resources available for that.
What is the resource? Name one resource or a way to get connected to that team dynamics resource.
Yeah, so they can reach out to me through the website, and I can connect someone to Shelley, who's kind of running point on putting together. We have a training that we were both mentored by a guy named Keith that lived in Southeast Asia most of his life and really helped take a lot of what is the academic world and then also 40, 50 years of trying to help church planting teams see disciple-making movements, church planting movements happen. And there's a workbook and then some training. We can come in and do that. Or, again, mentoring coaching is available. But Shelley would be our main point for that.
I love a real specific, tangible thing people can reach out and do. And so as we're closing today, I just want to say to the leaders that are listening, your team needs you, not just as a doer, not just as a fixer, but as a leader who brings clarity, direction, and care to the team. I know I want that. I know the people on your team want that. Your team needs you. And fall in love with the job of leading your team. Start this week with one intentional time blocking session and go through the steps that Jen mentioned. I love it as pulling aside, reflecting, confessing, getting others involved, It's a just restart. That's what leadership is. 1,000 restarts, 10,000 restarts of times you realize you haven't done it that great, and restart and do it again by God's grace. And so thank you guys for being with us here today. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm sure that our listeners have gotten a lot of nuggets from you guys, and I'm really thankful for that. And on the tools, I should mention again, there'll be a link in the description to video and a tool that you can use that will help with this whole idea of leadership as well. And this has been the Field Leaders Podcast, a ministry of Missio Nexus and a part of the Missio Nexus podcast network. Leaders, you are not alone. We are here to help you connect, learn, grow, and collaborate. God bless.
Daddy,